Hey friends, Jewel back with another super cool astrology video, and I want to talk about the opposition between Venus and Saturn in Synastry. What happens when we see this very interesting aspect? So Venus is the way that we love, our style of loving, our style of what we find valuable, meaning how we relate to that. What we deem worthy of our investment. And it's very much descriptive of our sensuality and how we want to be loved and how we do that loving. And Saturn is our sense of maturity, measuredness, carefulness, what we are willing to invest in for the long term, our sense of responsibility, and where we are not willing to take risks. It's really about a long-term investment. And so when these two meet in an opposition, it is one of the most interesting karmic bonds in all of Synastry. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, but when it does, it's pretty amazing. So what happens is the Venus person is very drawn to the Saturn person with this particular opposition. The Saturn person has a lot of the upper hand. They are put in somewhat of a Svengali kind of position by the Venus person. So they have a lot of influence. And see, where Saturn is in our personality, in our chart, that's that part of our character where we feel like we're the know-it-all. We're accomplished there. And so when that's opposing somebody else's Venus, there's a lot of give and take when it comes to what each other has. Saturn gives a lot of information and teaching and a steady hand to the Venus person. The Venus person in return gives the Saturn person warmth, joy, love, appreciation. And so this is an opposition that can work extremely well in Synastry if the Venus person doesn't back away early on in the relationship. This can happen. Depending on the strength of the individual's Venus and Saturn, this will really determine how this opposition will play out, or if it will play out at all. Because if we have two somewhat mismatched, meaning two differently aspected Venus and Saturn here, we could see the Venus person, and we very often do see the Venus person backing away or deciding otherwise, and in the more earlier stages of the relationship, because they can be very uncomfortable with the way that the Saturn person assumes their influence over the Venus person. When it does work, this one is so binding that it does not matter what else is incompatible or otherwise inharmonious. This opposition will keep you together no matter what, if it works for you. It has a way of karmically linking us to where we feel that there is a safe place here for the two of us. So if we get past the initial mismatch factor when it comes to the style and the strength of each other's planets here, and get to where it is working for us, because you need to look in the composite chart. That'll give you a really, really good clue. In fact, it'll tell you the story about whether or not this opposition in synastry is translating to stability in the composite chart, or if it's kind of creepy. And if it's creepy, then it's not going to be something that we're going to see the positives come from. The Venus person is going to find the Saturn person, kind of creepy and oppressive. They're going to back away. So it's one that you would think that we would see more in synastry, but I actually don't see it a lot. And I see a lot of synastry charts. I work a lot. And I do a lot of couples compatibility. So I get a chance to see many, many, many charts from all cultures, all different types of people. And this opposition is not that common. For its stickiness and its feeling of karmic fatedness, you would think that we would see it a lot more. It's not uncommon, but it's not really common. And in my mind, you would think that it was. Venus-Moon and, Venus-Saturn and Moon-Saturn aspects are actually pretty common in synastry, and especially composite charts. Even though they're oppressive, that's kind of the nature of long-term relationships. That's a lot of what we think a component to long-term relationships is. That's kind of built into a lot of relationships spread really across all cultures. So this is one that is really like a steel bond that really can endure any assault if it works for you individually. And it's really a function of the Venus person being the one who makes that determination. The Saturn person likes what they see, generally, with this one. Saturn is, think of the nature of Saturn. This is a cold planet. This is a planet that is very inhibited and enclosed. Think of the rings of Saturn. And so when it comes in contact with Venus in synastry, it feels warmth. It feels the humidity of Venus. Venus is the hottest chick in the solar system. Literally, this is a hot, steamy planet. And so when these two meet, Saturn very much wakes up and just kind of unfurls in the warmth of Venus. Venus is the one that is somewhat crushed or inhibited by this influence of Saturn. So typically in synastry, Saturn is very interested when we have Saturn-Venus contacts. It's not always going to work out because it shows an inherent linking where one is looking, Venus is actually looking for warmth. It's also looking for stability because it is that natural ruler of the second house. When it comes into contact with Saturn, it enjoys the stability of Saturn. It enjoys the productiveness of Saturn. But Venus is also looking for other things. And so there has to be a balance here in synastry. That's why if we have too much Saturn, it becomes oppressive. It becomes something we're not looking for. So we want to look in synastry carefully at what is each person's Moon and Venus requirements, because those are our security requirements, and how does that relate to the strength of the other person's and the aspects to the other person's Saturn. So Venus-Saturn contacts are kind of complex because intuitively you would think that this is not something that we would see anybody wanting to link together. But it is. It provides a structure to a relationship. But we always have to look at the strength of the Saturn-Venus bond. If it's too much, it's just not going to be any fun for anybody. There are some people, who have, maybe Capricorn Venus, And in that case, or we have a Venus that's really heavily aspected to Saturn, and other things that can modify, Venus in the 10th house. There are things that can predispose somebody's Venus in their personality, their love nature, to being very comfortable with a heavy Saturn influence. So then there's other people that, Venus in Aries, and it's maybe unaspected, and they're just not going to be able to really relate to any amount of having their Venus in aspect to somebody else's Saturn. So this is an opposition where you're going to want to very carefully examine the natal planets involved first, and then look to the composite chart to show you how this one is most likely to play out. And if it looks pretty darn sure that it's something that is joining an overall pattern or creating a pattern of stability, then you have a pretty good chance of this one being able to create that steel-like bond that we can see endure the test of time. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, please subscribe to my channel. You can find me on the internet at truthandaspectastrology.com. Yes, I do private consultation. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and other social media at Truth and Aspect Astrology, and Patreon. Please find me over there, and I'll be back super soon with more super cool videos. Bye-bye.